Your boss asks you to develop a proposal for new streamlined client onboarding process. They give you specific requirements, you spend 2 weeks nailing every single one, presentation day, you finish strong, and then your boss says, "This is solid work. But let's bring in AI chatbots." Wait, this wasn't in the requirements. Your budget doesn't account for new software. This changes everything, and you're angry and frustrated because you spent 2 weeks thinking it through and building and rebuilding. And now they're just changing the game. Your effort is not being heard, and meanwhile, the colleague who just nodded and agreed to everything got a raise again last week. But you know that you don't want to act like that. And in the next 10 minutes, I'll show you why pushing back in situations like this create problems even when you're right, what's really happening in this moment, and 3 techniques that will turn confrontations into collaboration. I'm Greg, co-founder of Be Smart Communication Studio, and for 10 years, I've coached professionals through these exact conversations. My goal is to help you navigate this misalignment strategically. So if you want practical science-based communication advice every week, hit subscribe. With that, let's dive in. When your boss throws in new idea after you finish your presentation, people might go into one of two extremes, and both destroy the conversation. Number one, you swallow it, say, "Sure, I'll add AI chatbots. You're not disagreeing with anything," and then you just go to build and rebuild everything that you've already done. You might be seen as a team player, but that's what builds inside of you: resentment. You start wondering if your work even matters, your best ideas get overheard, and one day after another, you get less and less motivated until you become just a soulless person who comes in every day and doing whatever they are being told. This is not a great place to be. Or you go into other extreme and you answer immediately. You say, "No, this is not how we do things around here. This is not what you told me initially." And you're right. This is actually something completely new and maybe way over budget. But the problem is that if you use this answer consistently, if you use it all the time, well, you become seen as a problematic person, tough person to have negotiations with, or maybe not a team player. I'm not saying I'm agreeing with this label, but this is how it goes in many organizations. And I've coached people like this. I once coached a top performer team lead who've been, nailing every metric, hitting every target. Still, they were marked as toxic at the yearly review because they were very difficult to have a conversation with about any plans that they're making after they presented those plans. Because as soon as they put some effort into it, they saw any critique or any comment as an attack on their expertise, and they were protecting it with all their heart. Eventually, they were just pushed out of many projects, regardless of their achievements. I don't really like that we have to be this agile in the organizations in order to get this performance, get this yeses, and get this projects going. But as soon as you're a top performer, you should realize that people cannot only operate rationally. We all have emotions, and forgetting about that is not very strategic either. So, how do you push back effectively? Well, if you're asking this question, this is probably the part of the problem. The phrase itself implies opposition. It creates a competition with winners and losers, and nobody wants to be a loser. And the moment you enter this frame, you've already failed the conversation, even if you were right in the beginning. Let me show you why this mindset sets you up for a failure. Research shows that competitive conflicts at the workplace tend to decrease teamwork, increase negative emotions, and stress levels. When people are arguing against each other, they lose sight of their real goal. They stop listening to each other and they're starting to just pushing their position and trying to come up with the most clever argument there is. Instead of collaborating, they're starting to compete, and this kills creativity and this kills the effectiveness of the organization. In the moments like this, great ideas can be buried under the need of being right. And what also kills me about having these conversations, having this competition at work, is that in moments like this, we completely shut off our senses for any opinions but ours. And we became very defensive and very self focused instead of being open to other ideas, other opinions, and therefore more efficient. Instead of being curious, we're just being defensive. And presuming your boss or your colleague do not have any useful impact, well, that's bold. Maybe they know something you don't. Maybe your boss, who's not an expert in your domain, that's okay, but maybe they know some insight into corporate strategy that they haven't communicated well just yet. Or maybe they know something about your colleagues that you don't know, and they are trying to give you a sign or trying to nudge you into the right direction for the project that you're making. And well, the third problem with this frame for the conversation is what I've already mentioned. With this type of communication, top performers become outsiders. Nobody wants to constantly listen to negative feedback, to no's, to obstacles that we're facing. And I understand this might not sound right, but this is the truth. People tend to react emotionally in these situations. If they gave you an idea and you immediately say no to that, they tend to see the pattern here and they tend to make a connection that you're negative, you don't want to listen to them, and they start to try to avoid having these conversations with you. And this is how people get pushed out of the processes and then of the organizations completely. I really don't like seeing that, and I really think that there is a great way to change that. So here are some techniques that it might help you to have these conversations better without losing your voice. And here's what's interesting. Those techniques actually work with the most hostile and defensive and senseless bosses there are. Because people like that, they also tend to get used to the way other people communicate with them. They also kind of used to hearing no and just forcing their decisions because they can use their power. And as soon as you break this pattern with the techniques I'm about to tell you, they will be surprised and they will probably more open for the communication. They would be happy to have these conversations because they're not used to behavior like that. So let's start with the foundation. This is it. This is the foundation. Everything builds from there. If you don't do that, probably no other advice will help you. So, when you hear completely new idea in the end of the presentation or completely random suggestion in the middle of your speech, never start your answer with a statement. Open with questions. You don't need to make it complicated. You can just ask a simple clarifying question, but this will give you some time to think, and this will also give you extra context that is always useful. So let's get back to our scenario. Your boss says, well, that's solid work, but let's add AI chatbots in the initial contact with our user. What you want to say, what your brain wants to say is, no, we will not do this because it's way over our budget and we don't have time to do that. Stop yourself right there. Don't be quick with the answer. Maybe instead open up with a question like that. Could you tell me more what's driving this focus on automation? Maybe there is some new client expectations that I'm not aware of, or maybe there is some data that shows that we need to do that. See what just happened? You didn't agree. You didn't disagree. You asked a genuine question. And this opens up a conversation instead of closing it. What it does, it A, buys you some time to think about the answer, about the context, about the suggestion itself. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it has some logic behind it. Second, it often reveals information that you don't have. It gives you extra context. And third, it keeps the conversation collaborative instead of confrontational. And I'll be honest, at first it might sound unnatural. You might not be genuinely interested in their position, and you might not want to listen to their advice. But trust me when I say this. If you do this as an exercise, as an experiment, just to observe the reaction, just to see how they react, and you make this into your habit, it will initially feel more and more natural. And as soon as you see results of answers like that, you will understand the benefit of using them. And here's some simple questions you can use. You can say, could you tell me more about something? Or help me understand how this works? Or is that right that something, something? This is just an opening phrases that it can help you get into this flow of a more collaborative conversation. So now, when you built a foundation, let's move into the conversation itself. And now we need to understand that most disagreements that you're having, like between your boss and you and AI chatbots, those are not disagreements. Those are actually misalignments. You know something they don't, they know something you don't, or maybe you're optimizing for different things. And framing technique helps you to identify those misalignments and address them directly. Here's how it works. First, get clarity on scope. What are you discussing? What is actually the subject of the discussion? Is it the whole thing? Is it the whole presentation, whole idea? Or is it feedback about one specific part of it? Let's see how it works back at our scenario. So your boss suggests you implement AI chatbots. You'd say, tell me more. They say, well, we need to do that and explain their thinking. And then you might say, to clarify the scope of the conversation, you might say, all right, are you talking about the whole thing? We need to change the whole thing to AI chatbots? Or are you talking about one specific part of the presentation? Well, now they might answer, no, 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 no. I think the whole idea works. I think everything should be as you proposed. But just in the very beginning, in the initial contact phase of the onboarding process, we should add AI chatbot just to this part. That's great. Now you know. Now you know that your work actually being heard and you're not so frustrated maybe you're more open to the conversation in general. Now it's time for step 2 of framing. And here you should align on criteria that you're using. Here you might ask yourself, what are we optimizing for? What we're trying to achieve together in this conversation? And this is where the real misalignment usually lives. So now you might say, okay, so help me understand that. Are we trying to add chatbots to get a better time to contact? Or we are trying to cut costs on the long run? So what are we actually trying to achieve with this new feature? And your boss might answer, well, to be honest, I'm just pressured by my I don't know, by my manager, and they really want us to use innovations more and to show that our platform is full of innovations, full of modern tech, and show that to investors. And this is it. You found the real issue in the conversation. This isn't about budget. This isn't even about metrics. This is about one person being worried that they would seem ineffective or not tech savvy enough, and they're just trying to compensate for that. And now you can go into step 3, make misalignment clear and confirm it. Now you can say, okay, so we need to show innovations, but obviously without compromising our delivery, our metrics, and our customer experience, and probably within the initial timeline. Is that right? And here your boss says, exactly, you understand me. See how the situation changed? Instead of two people arguing with each other, you're now in the same boat. You're now trying to solve the task together. And now you can say, so if we want to do that, do we need to stay strictly within the budget or do we have some room to work with it? And your boss might answer, yeah, well, obviously, if we add something so serious like I suggested, we have some freedom of movement to the right, and we can add some resources to achieve that. And that's it. Now you solving the real issue, you're solving the real problem instead of just surface problem. Maybe you can keep your core approach that you've initially proposed, add some stuff to it, not being too optimistic or too promising in the beginning of this conversation, but still you have more options now. You see the picture clearly and you understand that your work is valued. At the same time, you understand what needs to be improved and why it needs to be improved. And instead of having an enemy in this conversation, you now have an ally. But now you can strengthen this alliance even more. Because instead of just giving a solution, you can co create one. And here's the thing, the end result of co creation might be beyond your imagination. It might not even look like the initial idea of your boss. It might not look like your initial idea. But either way, it will be your mutual result and you'll be more committed to achieving that. And here are three questions that you can answer in the process of co creation to get more information and more ideas from your counterpart. How does this work? How this should work when something happens? And do you agree that? Those three questions will help you to navigate the process of co creation for a new, better solution. Let's see this play out in our scenario. You might say, if we're adding a tech innovation component to satisfy the board, how does that work with our 30% time reduction target? Are we expanding scope or replacing something? Your boss might say, good question. What are you thinking? And you might say, okay, I agree we need a tech angle and we could reframe. Phase one of my proposal is to emphasize the CRM automation we're already implementing. That is significant innovation, but it's within the budget. And then we can pilot AI chatbots for frequently asked questions handling specifically, which doesn't require major integration with the systems we already have. And here your boss might answer, I like that. How should we this work when client needs to escalate from the chatbot? You see, in this situation, questions are natural not just from you, but from your boss as well. And you can build up on that. You can say that, of course, we will do it steadily and implement step by step, but still showing the results every month or so. Your boss might say that it is great that you've listened to them and that you are ready to incorporate their idea and stay within the budget and so on and so forth, right? And in the end, this conversation became, instead of being just a tough negotiation between you two, became a collaborative process where you together are creating a solution. And this solution doesn't break your work and doesn't break your idea. It's still there. Your idea is still there. It's not going anywhere. But at the same time, you've used some insights from your boss that will probably also help you in your career and will help the organization in general. You didn't silently comply. You didn't argue relentlessly. You just guided the conversation into a place where both people are equally heard and participate in the decision making process. So, next time, when your boss suggests a new brilliant idea immediately after your presentation, Here's your framework. Step one, catch your defensive reflex. Remember not to act upon it immediately. Remember to give you some time and space and open up with a question. Step two, use framing technique to better understand context and better understand the criteria that you're optimizing for. What's the actual goal of this discussion, to find the real problem instead of just surface problem. And step three, co-create using questions and asking questions, answering questions of your counterparts, and together you can build something great. You see, this isn't about being passive, this isn't about being silent, this isn't about being soft, this is just about being more empathetic and more strategic with your answers. And the truth is, great leaders always do that. Great leaders always open with questions. They always try to learn instead of argue. And if you are not in a leadership position, doesn't mean that you cannot act like a true leader. And I think this will give you great benefits. And that's it. If this was helpful, subscribe to this channel and get more science-based communication advice every week. And also hit the like button and tell me the weirdest idea that your boss suggested to you. Good luck having these tough conversations and see you next week.